Tarot Oracle. We're continuing our Tarot and Symbology course. First thing I want to talk about, when we're now at Strength, is the infinity symbol, and that points to obviously endless possibilities, or you possess the energy, you possess the abilities to overcome, and you can see that with obviously sort of taming the lion. We also see the infinity symbol as well in the magician, who also has an equal amount of power, but in a different type of format. So the magician's power comes from his mastery of all of these things. Strength's power comes from the ability to tame the lion, or to overcome adversity, to overcome major obstacles via the strength, or the inner strength, instead of the power of the outward strength that you have sort of with the magician. And you see that as well with the crown of roses. And this is not like a firm crown to where it's complete royalty and stuff like that, where you have with some of the other cards like the Emperor, for example, where you just have a royal crown that shows his powers and his abilities. This is a more gentle crown. It's a crown of roses, and the roses obviously represent as well the balance, or the affection, or the gentleness. So we have this a gentle crown sort of, and then we have all of the roses all over the outfit, and that's going to represent the ability to overcome, but the ability to overcome with gentleness, or with strength from within, not sort of an outward power that you would need in other instances. Now we obviously have as well the mountains, which again point to obstacles to overcome, or things that you need to, challenges you need to face, and challenges you need to overcome in order to get to where you want to go. Now in the upcoming card with the Hermit, you'll notice he's on top of the mountain, so he's overcome those challenges, but the challenges are yet to be faced. The challenges are in the foreground on the Strength card. So it's kind of important to realize that, again, it's not an outward sort of, strength, hard strength. It's an inward, gentle, progressive strength. And you'll notice that she's using that to sort of tame the lion. Now, some people say that she's sort of prying the lion's mouth open, and others say that she's sort of taming the lion. So the lion has his tongue out, he has strong eye contact with her, etc. So it's one of those things: is she prying the mouth open, or is she just being gentle with the lion and persevering through outward strength? That's one of those things as well. So over in this card, you can see, obviously, in this particular case, I mean, she's obviously sort of just soothing the lion and getting in touch with the lion via her own methods and her own power. So again, more of an inward strength. So this is one of the most important cards in the deck. Now remember, this is also Leo, so we're also looking at sort of a presentation or a public display of this as well, right? So it's not one of those things where she's isolated and only the lion. She's maybe doing this for public display, or maybe doing this for showing the affection, or for getting the affection out into the public. And so again, you see the strength over here as well, with many of the same symbols, but the mountains are a bit more prominent in the back. Again, she has the crown, but it's a more gentle crown. It's not a hard royalty reminder crown like you have on things like the Emperor. So that is the symbology within Strength. And the next card is the Hermit. Now again, with the Hermit, has already climbed the mountains. He's already overcome the obstacles, and that's a very important point in this card, because he doesn't really have the obstacles or the mountains in the background. They are in the foreground. He has conquered that, and he has been there and done that. And you see that as an overall theme of it, a bit of a cold, cool theme here compared to over here. So if Strength is more a warm theme, more an approachable card, an approachable type of person, you get the opposite with the Hermit, because the Hermit is a cool feel, he's up above and things like that, and that's where you get the isolationism of the Hermit card itself. But you have that cool feeling of, maybe this is not the type of person that is going to be very receptive to a social gathering or something like that, right? Obviously, because he's the Hermit, but maybe this is not the person that is going to be the best person, the most warm reception that you're going to get when you go through that. So another thing, he's also standing on ice. So you see the ice on top of the mountains. And again, a little more of the coolness, a little more of the isolation, no pun intended, isolation of the Hermit. Now the staff he is holding is one of those staffs that a priest or something, or a pilgrim, a saint, would have. And that's one of the things where the hand that he's holding it in is the hand of the subconscious mind. So it's sort of the higher level of awareness that he has, that inner connection that he has as well. So he's also standing very, very upright. In other words, he has both feet at the exact same place. So it's like this perfect balance that he has. He's not really falling over like, let's say, the fool is when he's walking. He has that balance. He has that grace, and he's very sturdy, because not only does he have 2 feet firmly planted on the ground, but as well as the 2 feet are together and they're firmly placed and they have a good stance. Now here we have the Star of David within the lantern. David means the beloved of God. So the light from the star is lighting up sort of the entire area. And that's important because he is on a high point in the mountain. So his light is going a long way. And his light could also be pointed toward guidance. Like you have a lighthouse, and you have a lighthouse sort of letting you know where the cliffs are, or where the end of the sea is when it's night and dark and things like that. This light could be illuminating many things, including the ability to see beyond, or the ability to see more than normal. So it's sort of like finding your way, or a guidance in getting your way. So now you also have the hood, and the hood represents a bit of secrecy, or a bit of privacy. The hood is covering, his head and all those stuff. You could be looking at protection as well, but in the Hermit's case, maybe a bit more of a privacy feel with this being the Hermit. So the last thing is the beard, and the beard is white, and you'll see these old white beards in sort of the cards that they want to let you know have been around the block, have been there, done that, have been there, done that, seen that. You have that again with the emperor, for example, that white beard, and the white beard here represents knowledge. So again, the Hermit has been there, done that. He is sort of attuned with all of that stuff, and he has that knowledge that is required to make the journey. He has that knowledge that's required to illuminate the world, or illuminate everything. So he's not a young person sort of just wandered up on the mountain by mistake. He had a long, progressive journey to get there, and he has the knowledge and the abilities to make things happen. So he has a lot of power, even though he sort of is isolated and he is the Hermit. Now you also notice that his eyes are closed, meaning he really doesn't want to communicate, or really doesn't want to connect with other people. And again, obviously, because he is the Hermit. But that is the symbology behind the Hermit card. And the next we have the Wheel of Fortune. This is my painting that I did of the Wheel of Fortune. I did this in acrylic, so just wanted to show this off basically. So let's go to the cards and look at the symbology. Like in many cards, we have angels, lots and lots of winged angels. Symbolizes the divine, or the messages from the divine, the link between normalcy and the divine within all of the various wings that we have and angels that we have all over the card. Now, there's also a bird in here that talks about rising above or sending messages from above. Also, a link from the ordinary into the divine, and you see the bird over here as well. And I want you to notice that all the wings are open and flapping. Maybe not over here, but on the Waite deck we have all the wings are open and flapping, and it sort of gives a protection blanket around the whole card. We have this blanket of protection from the wings, and the wings also represent obviously happiness because they're open and they're spread and they're going. It represents happiness but also protection as well. So the bird, again, talking about rising above and getting messages from the divine back down. And then we have the bull, which is sort of a Taurus type lean to show us the stability and a bit of a stubbornness maybe, but the stability that comes with the bull. Now we have the clouds, again, sort of this protective blanket around the wheel, and you'll see that theme a lot between all the protective blankets around the wheel and that the wheel is adequately protected and things like this. And you'll see as well as the eagle. So the eagle, again, birds, the eagle, again, a sort of a spirit guide, a connection to the divine and things like this. Now the lion represents strength. We just did the lion and strength, so easy to remember. Also courage and things like this. Now we do have, all of them have a book open, and the book open again points them to the divine knowledge. Not just that we have a bunch of connections with the divine, but we have divine knowledge. All the books are open, and we have many of the characters reading from within the book. And that's important because they have that knowledge that they need for getting things done or getting through the wheel or moving through the wheel's cycles, because wheel does represent a bunch of different cycles and things like that. Now we have the Sphinx, which represents the connection with mystery or the unknown, and the Sphinx tail sort of wraps around there. And then we have the wheel, again, represents the cycles throughout that we go through on a day-to-day basis. So the snake, again, we have the snake. We've had the snake before in other cards, such as the Lovers. And the snake represents transition or transformation from one thing to the next. So again, we have many cards in other decks that point to transitionary periods and changes and things like that. And the snake here gives us a good representation of that and reminds us that we are constantly moving from one thing to the next. So that sort of connects again with the cycles theme that we have from all of these other things. So here is a snake from the Thoth deck. Again, change, right? Eating his own tail. This one's not eating his own tail, but we have that transformation or that move from one cycle to the next. And that's always very interesting. So again, the circle could also represent our circle of friends and just having the overall connection. So a ton of symbology within the Wheel of Fortune. And lastly, we have justice, a bunch of symbology within justice as well. One of the main themes of justice is balance, as you can see from variety of the cards and whatnot. So the balance is the scales that are being held. In almost every one of these, we have scales that are being held. So justice represents that scale or that balance. So since this is connected to Libra, we need that balance. And in addition to the scales, we have a lot of symbology pointing towards authority. So in addition to having the balance or having the knowledge needed to get the balance or to find the balance between the scales, we have authority. We have a ton of stuff that tells us about authority. One is the crown. So the crown obviously points to authority. It's important to have authority. If you can, sure, anyone can discover balance, but do you have the authority to make it happen, sort of like the courts, right? The courts are going to determine balance. Who's right, who's wrong, the courts will decide, a jury will decide, but they need the power in order to decide. Otherwise, it's a useless exercise. And the crown represents that authority and represents that power. Now, the next symbol would be the pillars on both sides, or sort of you have the pillars here, and we have sort of the big pillars on the other one as well, on the Rider Waite, talking about stability. And we've seen the pillars in other cards that do the stability and all this other stuff. Now, in some versions of this, we'll have a scroll, which represents the wisdom required or the learning required to make a good decision. If you're going to make a big decision, then you're going to need the wisdom required to do that. Another one is the sword. Now, the sword represents the absolute power, because the sword in every card is being held up high. It's very prominent, and it's being held in the right hand, the hand of, sort of a conscious decision, or the hand of finality. And we have that ability in all of the justice cards. You'll kind of see some sort of a, not only authority with the crown, but the ability to execute the judgment via the big sword. I mean, it's not a small sword, right? This is not like a small sword or a dagger or something like this. It's designed to be intimidating. It's always designed to be intimidating. So it represents that I can defend myself if need be, and things like this. Now you have the throne, which represents, again, the authority and stability. And we have that sort of that drape behind that connects the two pillars, and that drape sort of represents the disconnection from distractions, right? So if you're trying to find balance, if you're listening to a court case, you don't need distractions. You don't need the cell phone ringing, or you don't need people, disrupting and things like this. So you have that, the drape in the back, or the cloth in the back, that sort of stops all of that and removes the distraction from the back side, or anything from behind, or anything like this. Now, you also notice one interesting thing, the most interesting thing about justice, is just how young the person is. So if you look at the old cards, or the older cards, you'll have beards. We'll have these big beards, these old people with the knowledge and the wisdom to go forth and make determinations. But here in both cards, we have a youth, a younger person. This is not an older person with a big beard and things like that. So this sort of represents, the ability to not be too fixed in our ways, be a bit flexible. Like somebody who's really old, who has spent years and years and years doing the same things. They've had the same opinions. They're on the same side. They're on the same political leans. This person isn't. He's younger. He's more malleable, he's more flexible, and he's going to be able to listen to arguments for both sides from the court, maybe, and make a determination that's sort of fresh, right? And you'll see this, a lot of justice cards have a younger person in them. And you also notice that he has a foot hanging out, and the foot hanging out sort of gives him the ability to move. He's not fixed. He hasn't been sitting there for years and years and years. He has the ability to move. He has a foot kind of sticking out. He has that ability to leave, or to move around. So you see that flexibility both within the foot coming out of the bottom of the robe, and the youthfulness of the person sitting on the throne. So a very interesting card and full of cool stuff. So that is Justice. And as always, I'd like to thank my Patreon supporters who donate money to me to keep my quest going. My quest is simple. I want to teach you tarot, Lenormand. I want to teach you Kipper. I want to teach you everything that I possibly can. Astrology, obviously, as well. And they help me by supporting me and helping pay for the software that I use and all the fancy effects you see, and the microphone that I'm using, etc., etc. So my current Patreon supporters, thank you so much. They are Allie Cat, Annie Lemaster, Carolyn Borchard, Crystal McGinn, Gary Fink, Hot Chocolate, Janet Littler, Jessica Mante, KSW, La Ami, Peter, Richard Zeh,
Scott Miller, Shintaro Kuga, SJP, and Tina Iovero. Thank you so much. You can find a Patreon link in the description if you're interested in helping me out as well. If not, that's fine too. I would just ask, please hit like and subscribe. It gets more traffic to the channel. It gets more exposure to all the fun things that I do on the channel. Thank you so much for watching.